watching two Canadian national team players go toe-to-toe on the biggest of stages in Alistair Johnston and then an Alphonso Davies, who's recovered from his hamstring injury, come on and then see Alistair do so well, play such a complete game, and then have Celtic's hopes dashed and Alistair's hopes dashed by his compatriot, by his teammate, as Alphonso Davies pushed that kind of over the line so that Bayern could go through was pretty remarkable to me. And actually, I saw a post that went into detail about Alistair's individual performance. So before I get your reactions, Jimmy and Craig, so this is Alistair Johnston versus Bayern Munich. 34 passes, 85% completion rate. 2 passes into final third, 3 out of 6 ground duels won. So we had some really key tackles, especially in the box. 8 clearances, 1 clearance off the line, 2 shots blocked, 2 interceptions, 3 tackles, 3 recoveries. So this is actually from the Ishmael Kone enthusiast account on Twitter. And so he said, what a performance. And I agree. So it's pretty cool to see. So they bow out. But what did you think, Jimmy, about watching those two teams fight it out so they could make it into the last 16 of Champions League, but also to see two Canadians kind of go head to head?
Yeah, I thought it was amazing. As we continue to grow in this country, the game's getting bigger and better. Players are getting onto the world stage now, playing in these big competitions. It's a wonderful platform to see 2 top players playing against each other in the Champions League. I thought Celtic were very, very good. I thought they were unlucky. I thought they had a couple of good chances that they could have got something out of the match. But overall, I thought Alistair Johnston was brilliant in his defending, how he got forward. He was involved in the play so much. But then I guess, the writing was on the wall with Alphonso Davies coming on and scoring them at the back post against Alistair Johnston, really. Right? He was playing right back. So it was... It was a great match. I really enjoyed it.
It's a bit bittersweet for Celtic, isn't it? I mean, even if they had held on and gone to extra time, it would have been the first time a Scottish team had won in Bayern, and they would at least had that. And Bayern Munich had a lot of chances, a lot of shots. Goalkeeper played very well. Alistair Johnston was outstanding, and it's surreal in a way that we're looking at Canadian players playing at this level and pushing teams like Bayern Munich, playing for Bayern Munich. Is exceptional. It really is. It's pinch yourself really to see where we're at right now, and the standard that our players are playing at is just different class.
I think it's I was looking at it going, these clubs are so big. I mean, Celtic Park, 60-odd thousand seat stadium. Bayern, 75,000. These guys are playing in front of monster crowds, and obviously Champions League football midweek, which is something that everybody dreams of. They really are living their dream right now.
And 2 of the best players on the pitch. Well, especially Johnston.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's what's interesting to me is that. It's not just, there's 2 Canadians playing head-to-head. It's that they're leading teams, which is interesting. And I'm going to segue into our first Monger's whale sack. Our friend Flash Thompson said,
You called him Flash Gordon yesterday.
I did. And then he put out Flash, savior of the universe. So Flash, thanks Scott for reaching out. 1 Canadian international scoring a last-second goal to knock out a second Canadian internationals team in the Champions League is not a thing I thought I'd ever see 5 years ago. And our buddy CDG at GoCore goalkeeper, and still undecided how to react to it in the next day. And it's John Travolta in Pulp Fiction looking for Uma Thurman. Anyways, it's probably not what we would have expected, a couple of years ago, but the trajectory of these players and the Canadian national program has kind of changed over the last few years, has it not? Right? Like we expect this, correct?
Yeah, we're starting to.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it is cool. And then with Alphonso with his new contract at Bayern Munich, kissing the badge.
Mhm.
He's good on the camera, eh? He knew
Oh,
exactly where that camera was after he put it in.
Yeah.
That's key. But what I found interesting, so JC loaded up our Jesse Marsh interview that dropped on Family Day, which I re-listened to because I'm a gigantic nerd. And what I thought was interesting about that is the conversation. I think Jesse Marsh has gotten a little bit of heat for talking about things being quote unquote too easy for Alistair Johnston at Celtic. And it's the marrying of John Herdman's view, which I think Jesse Marsh shares a little bit, of playing in tier 1 setups, playing for top clubs in the world. But Jesse Marsh is saying, of course, that's important. It's the clout, it's the credibility, it's changing the minds of sort of world football as it pertains to Canadians. But the most important thing is playing. So I think what you're seeing with Alistair, what you're seeing with Fonzie is the best of those two worlds kind of colliding. And both of them making the best of the situation where they're getting valuable minutes, they're getting incredible experiences, as Jimmy's saying, midweek, under the lights, Champions League football, the biggest of stages, looking across the way, maybe even on the same flank, and seeing your brother, seeing your teammate who wears the Canadian badge with you, but you're on opposing teams here. So it's getting that minutes, playing or getting those minutes playing for a massive club and doing it in Champions League. Like, those two guys are absolutely living the dream, and they're blazing the trail for everybody else. So Alistair, back to him and things being maybe too easy for him, there are certain matchups in the Scottish Premier League that things are going to be too easy. But what he's able to grab from all of that experience and what he's living right now at Celtic, including Champions League, he's going to be able to bring back whenever the national team plays, whenever he's in any other competition with Celtic, and he's going to be able to imbue that into the squad. Because Sharm's question to Jesse about Alistair was, how big is his voice in that room? And right now it's as big as you want it to be. He's on that leadership council. And if I'm a young player who's coming up and getting just a taste of what the national team is with Jesse Marsh and with those influential players, that's the voice that I fucking want to hear in my locker room, right? Like, I'd be looking at Alistair being like, oh my God, and he's down to earth. And then you've got Fonzie who's wearing the armband, and you've got all of those guys sharing those responsibilities. So I think he's exactly in the right place. Would you agree, Jimmy, that for him, at least for right now, Celtic is exactly where he should be?
Look, I think what Jesse is saying is with Alistair being too easy, it's about the competition week in and week out.
Yeah.
Right. So you look, they play Bayern Munich, and then all of a sudden, next weekend they're at Ross County. And then you're playing Dundee, and then you're going to play Rangers, and you go into an Old Firm game. It's about having that competition week in and week out. If you're in the Premier League, if you're in La Liga, if you're in the Bundesliga, it's competition every single week. And that's what that's what he's saying. He needs to be in a place where he's going to get that competition every week. And there's no doubt about it. Celtic is a monster club. It's huge. But I think he just wants to get his top players in a top league where they're competing every single week. I mean, you look at Celtic right now, they've scored 76 goals. They've only conceded 12 in their domestic league, right? They're flying. So it's a competition that he wants for his players every week.
Is the European competition enough, Jimmy, that would sort of tip the balance there as far as getting enough competitive football in Europe?
Yeah, I mean, these games they're brilliant for a player. These are the games that you want to play in Champions League football. But you want more competition, don't you? You know, especially when you're a player, you want to test yourself every single week and playing for something. So I think, there's going to get to a point where I think Alistair will end up leaving Celtic and head into one of the top leagues in Europe.
Ooh, don't say that to any of our Celtic fans.
Look, no, but I'm a Celtic fan myself, right? I grew up supporting Celtic, and you see over the years, a lot of the top players they end up playing in Scotland, and then they end up moving. They might go south of the border, or they'll end up in the Bundesliga, or they'll end up somewhere else at some point.
Yeah, the bottom line is he's not making anywhere near the money that Alphonso Davies is. Like, it's not even close. So the potential for him to move on to a club that would pay him a king's ransom is certainly on the cards.
Craig, you always talk about how these whether it's international or Champions League, can make or break careers based on the focus. And yesterday's match showed Johnston, the announcers were talking about him nonstop and talking about his full game, basically how well he displayed his skills. Are these game changers for his career when he comes out into the spotlight against a Bayern?
Yes. Yeah. Just like when we see at international level, when players do it at the World Cups or different international tournaments, they can find themselves getting moves. We've seen that with a bunch of Canadian players. So doing it in the Champions League, where it's the best competition in the world, is going to get eyeballs on you. There'll be a lot of interest in Alistair Johnston.
It's about the interest as well, and how that translates. I talked about bringing those experiences back to the national team. Like the next time, well, actually, a friendly for the September window was just announced. So Canada's men's national team is going to be playing Romania in September 2025. That was just announced yesterday. But before that, lots of important matchups and competitions where they're going to be able to test their mettle. And one that's coming up is March 20th against Mexico in the semifinals of CONCACAF Nations League. So it's from one big stage to another. So to not only kind of increase your worth and with all those eyeballs on you, but it's again what you're bringing back to that national team. So every time you come back and you're wearing that badge and you're representing your country, you are a better version of yourself. And you're expressing yourself in a different setup, a different system. Jesse Marsh is asking you to do slightly different things than Brendan Rodgers is. And then again, it's your worth just keeps skyrocketing because a player like Alistair Johnston is able to deliver every time he plays. There's that consistency. So like what, Jimmy, when you think about CONCACAF Nations League and it's going to be SoFi Stadium March 20th, like those players and what they're living currently, like they're going to be influential and they're going to be better versions of themselves than when we last saw them in a Canadian kit, aren't they?
Yeah, I think every time you see the national team get together, you just see these players evolving. They're getting better, more confident. The way that they play, they're all in sync now, because the more games you get together, the better off you are as a team collectively. And I think you're starting to see that now. And it must be something special walking into the dressing room where, these guys are playing in these top leagues, playing Champions League football. So you can imagine the stories that they're telling one another. I mean, they must be just oozing with confidence, knowing just that these guys are playing on the biggest stages that there is in football right now, getting together, playing with the national team. But, it's not one or two players. There's a lot of players that are playing top league football right now.
And when you're standing in a tunnel and you're looking across and you're these world-class players, doesn't matter whether they're playing for Argentina or England or France or whatever, a lot of them are playing with these types of players, or they're teammates with these players. So you're not looking across the tunnel going, holy shit, we're going to get our asses felt today. Well, no, you're going to go up against them and you feel just as confident because you know them personally. You play and you train with them, so that confidence is going to go an absolute long way. We've got a top drawer squad of players right now.
Yeah, it's like fuck it, we're Canada, which we heard Alistair Johnston say when he was on Footy Prime being interviewed, and also like we belong, like that they've put their stamp on it. That when the other players are looking across at some of the Canadians, that there's that respect, like, and the Canadians themselves are no longer intimidated because they've been there. Right? Like that's a big deal. That's a big kind of threshold to step over and to step into, that that you can not only hang, but you can dominate.